Only Ishmael.
Only
It's so good.
Yes.
So I just started this book, and it begins with an epigraph from Isaiah. I will make a road in the wilderness, rivers in the desert.
Oh my God, that's good. Woo, that's good. That's good. That's really good.
Paul Atreides bringing rain to the desert.
Good evening. My name is Wilson. Welcome to Jared to Jared. On this week's episode, the Jareds will discuss The Great River, French literary theorist Roland Barths, The Ferryman, wrestling, the Barbie movie, and much, much more. Time to tune in.
Dude, I think I've told like 15 people about the Osprey. I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to be the Osprey, man. I just want to build my 400-pound nest and
Osprey figured it out, bro. He figured it out.
Invite Lady Osprey over. Like,
think about it though. Would that Osprey be happy if all he did was just like chill at home or like at like the Osprey temple and like nothing, no tasks, no job, just introspecting constantly, whether, video game, just like, fuck, man, he needs like some Osprey companions and to build a fort, and that's why that Osprey came, is because he had something good to offer, right? The offering.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The offering to the Lady Osprey. Like, so that's it, it's like, yeah, just the Osprey nest. But you're right, because imagine that dude just like sitting, not even in his nest, sitting in his parents' nest, like reading Albert Camus all day. It's like that Osprey's not going to be happy, bro. He needs to go fly. He needs to go build something,
There would be no Camus without, work and like doing stuff and getting out there and adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And mundanity too, of just like, you have a task, accomplish that task. There's no like thinking about, oh man, I'm like pretty chunky these days, pretty depressed, don't have enough like girlfriend time, whatever the case, right? You have a task to do, and that's what you're thinking about is doing the task. And then when you're done, you feel accomplished because boom, I did a task, which is a good thing. Boom, you get dopamine, chemicals, what have you, testosterone, because you're physically moving your body too. Which is the only way men can like produce and like, get it. So it's biological. It's science.
Man needs a mission.
The freaking, what does Dion call it? The like Eternity Project or something like that. The
Legacy Project.
The Immortality Project.
Yeah.
What's the Immortality Project? Yeah. But even like without that too, fuck immortality, fuck the future, the object of desire, right?
Yeah.
Literally just working, like like just working. Just, what I did was like cleaned all varieties on the spectrum, cleaned, taught, and was like a server in a bar. Yeah. All of it was just a task to do, and then you get your money, you can build your shit, it's actually pretty simple. It's fucking simple,
Yeah.
And of course that's not all life is, but
Yeah. It's pretty simple.
It was pretty simple. Let's turn the mics off.
We're done, bro.
We figured it out, bro. It's fine. It's completely fine.
Damn.
How was it? How was the temple?
Oh, it was cool. Yeah, we went up there this past weekend. It was fine. It was cool. It was a really nice space. Like, I like temples. I like Zen spaces. And it was like built 100 years ago by these like Catholic friars or something. So it's like this like big stone building with this like big Jesus carved into it. It's crazy looking. And then there's all these like Zen monks running around with their heads shaved. It's like a really cool space.
It's a crazy space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then down the road's a Tibetan center. It's like, what the hell? It's cool. It's like, this is weird. There's just like this one little pocket in New York where it's like all these people are just doing like
Eastern religion.
Eastern religions. Yeah, it's interesting. All near Woodstock too. Woodstock where they had Woodstock 1969 or whatever it was. Like kind of cool. Like it seems like there's places in New Mexico has this too, or at least spots in New Mexico where it's like it's a vortex or something. It seems to call in big events or spiritual events or something like that. Like over the centuries, there's just like lots of temples there, or there's lots of like different groups of monks there, or crazy art projects going on.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, it's interesting too how I was reading, actually, speaking of Barths, this concept he has about place. It's either Barths or Zeno. Do you remember the philosopher Zeno from like freaking pre-Socratic?
I know the name. I never.
Yeah, he had like some crazy paradoxes, right? His paradox of place and space.
Oh, cool.
How every place is connected infinitum with another place. So it just always continues to be a place within a place within a place within a place within a place.
Yeah, sure.
So,
yeah.
like Woodstock is a place within the earth, which is within the space, which is within a larger space, which is universal, which is the universal is probably in something we don't even know what it is. Right?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Like fractals, like the fractalization of space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I was thinking about that concept in terms of how places are infinitum, part and parcel of all the people that have once inherited and been in said space. Right. And I think that's kind of how like the concept of like a haunted house even came to ideals, right? And haunted spaces in general, because could we argue that every space like this one, Woodstock, now the Zen Center, who knows what it was before, is actually now set space because of, the conscious reality of human beings that inhabited it before, current, and future, perhaps, right?
Yeah. There's something to that. Like, and I had this conversation with a guy there who's living as a monk, and because there's a good energy up there. You can feel it. There's like a openness or spaciousness, just something you can breathe there. It's nice. And I guess according to like the Native American lore in the area, it's a sacred spot because where this temple is, it was built at the convergence of two rivers, and then there's a mountain right behind it. So I guess for whatever reason, I don't know like the exact details, but for some reason that becomes like a sacred spot. And I kind of get that, because I was in northern New Mexico and I saw where I think it was the Red River connects with the Rio Grande or something like that. I think it was those two. And I went to this spot, Eric and I up there went to the convergence point, did this hike, and you're at the convergence point, and it does feel like this, like, I don't know, this meeting of minds or something. It's just like something really interesting happens when two rivers become one. There's just something. Right. Like it sounds boring when I say that, but go feel it. And it's like you see it, and it's just like these two powerful bodies of water just fucking, just merging into each other, and it does create some kind of energy. And so I don't know. So maybe it's just like landscape creates some kind of like energy there, and then people for whatever reason pick up on that energy and then go there, and then they're doing their spiritual stuff, which then contributes to and even expands that energy potentially for lifetimes beyond.
Right. I'm thinking too about I like that concept actually, because it's not actually the people that are bringing to.
It's the land itself. Well, it's both,
Itself, right? Yeah. But we're part of the land essentially, so we then feel and sense what's happening with the Gothic, landscape there within, and then the reaction towards, God, this is making me think of like various spaces around the world and how they've been used. And, you know, it'd be interesting to like go into like some of these crazy, like volcanic worlds or whatever. Even let's take Tibet, right? What's the landscape? The landscape of Tibet is pretty like mountainous, unforgiving, would you say?
Oh, it's the Himalayas. They're living at 14,000 foot elevation. Right. I mean, that's like in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. You know, all these like rock climber bros and people like that are like, oh man, I did a 14er today. Like when I lived in Denver, people were always saying that, like I did a 14er. I was like, what's a 14er? They're like 14,000 feet, climbed this mountain, you know, did like 5 14ers this year. Crazy, you know, dudes love it. Right. And then it's like, so their peak, their big thing for the year, I did a 14er. That's where the Tibetans like actually just live. Like that's the space that they live in. Is fucking crazy. And then Mount Everest, the biggest mountain in the world, is down the street, you know, in Tibet.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, so there's got to be something like kind of wild there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even like which definitely has generated like these freaking, you know, years of philosophical, you know, thought, theories, philosophies that have moved human consciousness forward, could quite possibly be inspiration from such a wild freaking, you know, obscure space. And it doesn't even have to be so much that boom, Himalayas or whatever, right? Some spaces are just have their own weird vibes, like Albuquerque has its own space, Santa Fe has Jerusalem, right? Freaking the Red Sea, the Salt Sea, all that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of too, is freaking for some reason when you're talking about the rivers, is the river runs through it, right? At the end. It's like, such a good freaking digression when he's like, all roads converge in life at the end and a river runs through it, you know, fucking, what does that mean though? Right. The river, fucking constant flow, running through all trails in life, you know? And then I'm thinking of sort of the dreams of Jirga. They're trying to release the river back onto the surface, you know, filling the oceans. Imagine where the river meets the oceans too, right? So we kind of have this triptych going here. Can't quite pinpoint where I'm going here, but
no, this is big. This is
rip off of what so there's something here.
There's something here.
Oh, dude, my mic just got off.
Oh shit! You need a minute? I'll be right back. I'm going to get this quote from a book.
Yeah.
You good?
Okay, that's much better. Holy crap. I was like, it kept falling on me and then it just fell off.
Yeah.
That was a bad spot for it.
But yeah, man, freaking. No, I mean, all right, let's play with Jirga because you brought up Jirga. Dreams of Jirga, the whole. Okay, so there's this river that is confined and needs to be brought back to the surface, right? That's kind of the trajectory of the the narrative, yeah. Which one has huge symbolic significance. You know, I think of like the river of spirit, the river of soul, the river of creativity that perhaps has been locked up in you, you know, as the writer, as the individual coming up with this. What is that undercurrent of deep spirit and creativity that you have? You know,
good. Love that.
Through the process of writing Jirga, you are surfacing that potential.
Yes.
Right. That undercurrent of energy, of soulful creative energy. Right. And that's huge. I mean, it makes me think of the first page of Moby Dick. I've never read beyond the first page of Moby Dick, but that first page is something else. It's so good.
All right. Mine, call me Ishmael.
Call me Ishmael.
Call me Ishmael.
So good.
Yes.
Dude, but it reads like a tarot card. It's incredible. Like, because the whole thing is the first page is just him talking about wandering around, like dreaming of the ocean and stuff, and how he's like ready to kill himself. He's depressed. He's contemplating suicide. He's wandering around Manhattan,
right,
looking out to the East River and stuff, saying, "What am I doing? You know, what has my life become?" And when I start to feel this way, I start to feel for the ocean. I get restless. I start to feel for the ocean. I start to feel for the waves. I start to feel for the horizon once again, you know? Right. So then Ishmael, and he literally says, he's like, I'm thinking of killing myself. And then what's he do? He goes, that's when I go back to the ocean. So then he hires himself out to a ship, and then thus begins Moby Dick, right? And it's like, what is that oceanic space? Because he's not just talking about the ocean. He's talking about that inner sense of oceanic space, that inner sense of discovery, creativity, spirit, just like the river in Dreams of Jurga. You know, he's like, when I start to feel this malaise, I get restless. I want to go back to the ocean. Like the river goes back to the sea. You go back home.
Yes.
You know, go back home.
So good.
So good. I'll leave you with this quote. I'll leave my thesis here. So I just started this book, and it begins with an epigraph from Isaiah. I will make a road in the wilderness, rivers in the desert.
Oh my God, that's good. Woo, that's good. That's good. That's really good.
Paul Atreides bringing rain to the desert. You know? Exactly.
Incredible. And what do the gargoyles on the surface of Jare ultimately represent? Their own sin and desire, and you know, their Nosferatus up there, you know, and their own entrapment and war and hatred that they once had in the old kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
And they brought that back down into the surface. Now they're all alone and underdwellers, freaking isolated. Yeah. It's that river that's going to represent not only. Oh man, that's so good. I'm going to start Dreams off with that epigraph too. Because it's not only the river that is the actual physical terrain, rivers in the desert, right? The surface of Jurga has grown barren because of the great rivers, you know, suppression. But it's also the representation of the unification of their peoples getting over their objects of desire, the wastefulness, time lost, right? War, famine, hatred, racism, genderism, you know, between Alderactons, Denodatos, freaking, you name it, right? Back to the animal, back to the bird, back to the crows, you know, freaking back to water, which is flowing, moving, and it's a representation of life. Ultimately, right? Because the water enters the soil of the person, of the physical place, then so grows, right? A new life.
Water. Water is life, right? And the Long Island Sound, which is the body of water I grew up near, and that I still spend a lot of time near the Sound whenever I'm out on the East Coast. I go over there and make sure I spend some time with the Sound, and I'll swim in it as long as it's warm, and ride the ferry across it, going to see my sister in Connecticut. And last summer I was on the ferry and I saw dolphins. It was incredible. I've you know, spent time around here for 33 years and never saw dolphins. And then I'm sitting on the top deck of the ferry looking out, just kind of like sitting there, breathing, meditating. And then all of a sudden I just see fins popping out of the water, and I go, holy shit, you know, and I get up off the bench and I'm leaning over the railing.
Yeah.
And I see like 7 dolphins Seven's a sacred number as well, dude. And
plus Johnny Mnemonic, the dolphins.
7 dolphins just playing in the wake of the ferry, and I was like, holy cow, this is beautiful. But me and a buddy of mine out here who I grew up with, we refer to the sound, the Long Island Sound, which even that, it's like there's so much wordplay. I mean, I've written poems about the sound of the sound, all that kind of stuff. And like, we refer to it as the subconscious itself, because that's what the body of water is too, where it's like this, you don't know what's down there.
Right.
If you go to the ocean, especially, sometimes it washes things up on the shore. You go to the beach and you see like horseshoe crabs, or I've walked around the beach here and came across like a dead baby shark just like washed up on the shore, and stingrays and all this kind of stuff, crabs. It's wild. Like the ocean's just like spitting stuff up, but that's just such a minor fraction of what's actually down there. Just like the unconscious, right? The unconscious is always spitting stuff up here and there, scraps of dreams, scraps of this, scraps of that. But the actual full thing of the unconscious is 99% unexplored, just like the ocean.
Right. So
good. And then land only accounts for what, 20% of the Earth's surface. The rest is water. The rest is ocean.
Right.
Same thing with us. It's like the unconscious is 80% of who we are.
Right. That was Hemingway's, the glacier theory.
Cool.
Like 10% of the glacier, the other 90%'s under the water, right?
Yeah.
And that's how he wrote too. He only showed us 10%.
Right.
He made us feel the other 90%. It was implied, right? The implication of that. I like to, this might be a little off topic, but going along with water, with the land masses, with the consciousness, me and you this week had been texting about the ferryman.
Yes.
And what I like about the ferryman and mythological figures that we create like this is they're shamans of the physical world.
Yeah.
Right. The ferryman's a shaman of this wild river, right? Of the great river. He is of it. He's not afraid of ferrying people across this freaking dangerous, mythological bed of water that's going to change your life or kill you or take your life, right? Or transcend you into some other different dimensional realm.
Yeah. He
is the owner of the realm, right? It is him who we pay to get to said place, right? Yeah. The shaman, and what is it about shamanism that's so associated with being able to control the space, the actual physical land that's around us, and actually becoming one with it. So not only are you not afraid of it, but you're actually using the land, not only for sort of a financial benefit, if we're thinking of the Greek myth of the ferryman, but also a spiritual and soulful representation of that. Because really, if water is representing life and we can control such a gothic, physical manifestation as an ocean, as a rushing river, what other power would you want? How there'd probably be nothing better than to be able to control one's own environment, right? Which is sort of, would you argue, a manifestation or a representation of owning our own internal rivers, sort of back to dreams, the village river, right? Where are we headed now? We talked a lot about the village burning. We got Trump. We have on the individual level incels, all this crazy stuff nowadays, technology, TikTok, you name it, right? Freaking Mario Mangioni's blasting people, It's not only a physical river out there, rapid rushing, but there's also an internal psychosocial river that's going on too. And we're ultimately trying to get to the ocean, right? Because that's our final destination. That's the river's final destination.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the ocean, the river going out to the sea. Yeah, and there's a lot there. I mean, okay, the village is on fire. Yeah, and there's the river, there's the internal river, there's external physical rivers. I mean, one of the saddest days of my life was when the Rio Grande dried up in Albuquerque. I remember seeing on the news, like, it's dry. It's fucking, I mean, it trickles. I mean, that thing trickles, but there were some days that summer where it just dried, you know?
Right, right.
And I was like, I had this sense of, like, it was this primal fear, you know? It's like, I heard that the river dried up, right?
Right, right.
And then there were even some fires in the bosque around the Albuquerque portion of the Rio Grande because some freaking schizophrenic person, whoever it was, went down into the bosque and lit it on fucking fire. You know, there was like, this was like 2 summers ago or 3 summers ago where it burned up a portion of the park. And I remember feeling so like, I mean, there was a level of despair there and it felt primal though. I mean, what would you do, you know, if you were an ancient person, right? A couple thousand years ago even, and not even 200 years ago, and you're living by the river, which you have to do because that's where human societies are going to develop because you need water, you need transportation, all this stuff. And then the river dries up. What do? You leave. You know, you're like, that's fucking crazy. I'm not living by a dry riverbed. I'm going to die.
Right.
You know? So there's this inner primal sense of like, something is not okay.
Right.
The river is dry. We're fucked.
You know, that this is making me think too. There's a very deep, like, generational pain to natural disasters, right?
Yeah.
And hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, you name it.
Yeah.
But in New Mexico, we don't really deal with too many natural disasters.
No.
The one that we do, though, is drought. And drought, if you look at it historically, is one of the most devastating and depressing collective things the village can go through. In fact, whole villages have died off. They argued, you know, Chaco, the civilization, they could have left because of drought, etc. Right?
Exactly.
Think about dreams. Everybody had to go underground to be next to the water, right? The whole entire surface is basically abandoned now, you know, because of the drought. Depressing, devastating. You're losing your home. You're losing this. You're losing that, right? So essentially, metaphorically speaking, what does it mean when your Rio Grande, your personal stream of consciousness has gone dry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can we do to get water back into the natural ecosystem and flowing again so we can, you know, get back to life essentially and not perish out in this world, if that's making any sense? Because without water, in fact, there is no ferryman. What does the ferryman do without the river, right?
Yeah. And one memory, and then I'll come to the ferryman because I have some thoughts on that. But like, so my association with the Rio Grande was Albuquerque, this like trickling, muddy, you know, stream of a river, not so grand, you know, and then moved up north, you know, up around his house. And then that hike that I went on with Eric, where we saw where the rivers converged, I remember seeing like the Rio Grande as it actually is, you know, and I was like, holy cow, it's beautiful. It's incredible. It's like, this river was just so strong, you know, it's just rushing in like rapids. It was just so strong. And I run down to the river and there's all these like rocks and boulders along the river edge. And I literally fall to my knees on top of this rock. And like, it was like a spiritual experience. I'm like, yes, you know? And Eric was still up top. He took a picture of me. It's
Planet of the Apes.
Oh, it's such a sick picture, dude.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Like I'm, you know, just kneeling before the river, like in worship, you know, and it's like, wow. I mean, it really, really did something to my brain. Like I felt free. I felt refreshed. It was something powerful about seeing the Rio Grande in a grand state rather than how it, kind of dies out further south. And that's because of dams and all this shit. That's human reasons, And so anyway, so there's that. But then as far as like ferrymen go, there's so much there. Like in Buddhism, they have the paramitas, there's like the 6 paramitas, which are essentially just like kindness and compassion and whatever, there's just being a good person in various ways. It's a system for being a good person. And they're called the paramitas because that literally means the other shore in Sanskrit or Pali or something. And the whole idea being that you need to cross the river. You need to get to the other side. And what's that river? It's the river of yourself. It's the whatever, that self energy. Get to the other side. Get to the other side of your anxiety, of your anger, all that stuff. And then what's on the other side? The paramita of kindness, the paramita of compassion, all that stuff. But it seems really telling that it's an image of the other side, get to the other side of the river, so there's that. There's Charon in the underworld, the ferryman of the river Styx, everyone dies and goes down there and he's taking you across the river into the underworld. That's the boundary of the underworld. I mean, rivers has boundaries too, right? I mean, that used to be a thing. Like the Rio Grande was the separation between the United States and Mexico. I think it still is, right, in some spots. And so rivers as boundaries, and boundaries that are there to be crossed, cross the boundary from the conscious to the unconscious. And then that's where you start doing the kind of inner work.
Right.
Yeah, those are the main images. Or Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, same thing. I mean, he concludes that novel, and that one's also really Buddhist influenced, of course. It's about Siddhartha who becomes the Buddha, but the very end of the novel where Siddhartha is this young man who becomes the Buddha doing spiritual practice, it concludes with him becoming the ferryman, becoming the riverman. He's living on this riverbank, charging people 10 cents to cross the river or whatever. And he's sitting there meditating and then merges consciousness with the river. And that's when he becomes the Buddha.
Nice.
So yeah. So
I like that because it's not about the ferryman being an externalized individual, right? It's finding unification with the ferryman, becoming the ferryman yourself of your own river, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That way you can navigate to the other side.
Yeah, the River Jarad.
Right, the River Jarad, which is a great title to the episode. But no, the River Jarad, which really, oh man, this actually just bringing that up freaking brought up a whole plethora of images for me in our previous episodes. North to south winds, the freaking, the list goes on. The Jare to Jare, the yin to the yang, the river is actually the separation of the two, right? Because they can't always be unified. There is still a duality between, right?
Yeah.
So if you have no duality or you have no separation of the Rio Grande, the body of water, right? The river on Jirga that spans essentially the whole planet.
Yeah.
Then you have nothing at all.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing. Then if there is no water, if there is no river, if there is no ocean, if there is no duality within yourself and you're just a singular space, right? Then you're just a desert without a river. Back to Isaiah, we need to bring the waters in here. We need to change up the landscape and actually bring back some sort of resolution to the lives that we're leading out here in the world. Because that's really what the parable for me anyways is about. At the end of the day is decision making, sort of, life path, life trajectory, trailhead, choosing essentially along the trail, because along the river, right? And different forks in the river, what have you, making sure you remain on water, moving with life, right? Because water is the life. And then as you learn along the path, of course, you can transition into the ferryman.
Yeah.
And then the shaman isn't just shamanic for the South, he's shamanic for the village, right?
Yes. Yeah. And very naturally goes back and forth between either side of the river.
And what are me and you trying to find too? Man, this is crazy. What are we and you trying to find too? Is this connection to the village? Is to find, romantic connection with a cool, healthy partner, right? Yeah. Familial friendships, planting roots. We've been talking about this all month.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Last few months. So in order to do that, well, shit, man, we need to get shamanic with our own life rivers. That way we can have, back to last episode, and something to offer along the adventure that is on water, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. And there's really only one way left to go. It's like once you, there's only one way left to go, man.
There's only one way left from. Yeah.
Down the river. I mean, you gotta, now I'm thinking of Chris Farley in a van down by the river. But look, I mean, yeah, you start to tap into these, just shamanic inner energies, meditative things, which is all just to say your relationship to yourself, your deeper relationship to your unconscious, which allows you to connect more deeply with the space around you and the people around you. And you start on that path. And you kind of have to, at least in my experience and what I'm learning, is like you don't start the path and stop the path.
Right.
You don't start it, then jump off it. I mean, you can, but I was reading something the other day. I forgot who. Actually, I think, well, whatever. Anyway, it's this writer. He goes, if you're jumping onto that, kind of spiritual path, the one of self-knowledge, the one of connecting with the village and developing the best possible life and all that kind of stuff. He goes, if you start, he goes, there's no halfway house, and if you try and stop, then you're just kind of like in this awkward in between where it's like, okay, well, now I'm in the middle of the river. I'm not on this side or that side. I mean, if the ferryman is going back and forth with fluidity, moving through that liminal space with fluidity, it's like to have stepped into it, then step out is almost scary and sad. It's like, I don't know, someone who's like worked in an office their entire life. And then at the age of 40 or something goes to a music festival and does a bunch of mushrooms and has this transcendent experience. And then they're back in their office on Monday. If anything, they're going to be more depressed because they're like, wait a second, I saw something. I saw that there's another way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw that there's another way to live. But now it's just a memory. Now it's just a dream, and it's fading and it's fading. And the vague taste and memory of that dream actually just makes the day to day more difficult, because now instead of being in the office being like, oh yeah, things are cool, I'm in an office, whatever, you're sitting in the office dreaming about what that other thing was, which is deeply painful. And that's the halfway house on the spiritual path, So
the
it's
nostalgia.
Like, the nostalgia. You gotta go all the way, man. There's only one way left to go. You have to. And it's like, we don't have to. People can do whatever. But it's like, at least for me in my state of mind and how I feel about this stuff, it's like, and by spiritual path, I just mean continued expansion, continued learning, reading more, creating more, deeper relationships, all that kind of stuff. It's like, I can't stop now.
Yeah.
Jesus here, 33.
No, dude, love it. Stay alive. Take the red or the blue pill sort of thing too.
Yeah. You can't take both.
You can't take both. Yeah. And if you try to go back, you're just going to end up what's his name? Cypher. So, and
the Cypher thing.
He was killed by the village. So, which he was trying to destroy himself. But yeah. But the good thing about it is once it's unlocked, then you dwell and you change and you evolve over time. Maybe you're sitting at that office all you've been thinking about for 5 years is Gail from accounting, you know, and then and turning in your TPS reports, and then you know, you go on a spiritual journey, maybe some mushies, whatever, and then you realize, hey man, this does suck, right? You get uncomfortability.
Yeah.
And you realize, hey, Gail sucks, man. She's married. Like, you know, I don't know why she's messing with me for 5 years already. I need to like move on. And then the art teacher's really cool. So you're like, she's out there on the river.
Yeah.
Hey, can I join your raft? You know, and then boom, you're like, you're figuring stuff out more, maybe little by little that go on. But you know, it's awareness to the shadows, right? Let's go back to the cave. Yeah. You know, it's not only it's realizing that, oh my God, I've been like, I thought the shadows were real this whole time. It's the freaking actors that are like dancing in front of the freaking stone walls, you know, and it's like, oh man, this is a freaking show of it. This isn't, you know, a reality. And then you start realizing, oh fuck, I'm in a cave.
Yes.
What nobody else realized, we're in a cave, everybody. You know, this isn't. This is essentially a VR simulation for Plato, right,
dude? Exactly. Like, man, like I watched the Barbie movie with my sister this weekend.
Yes,
5 stars.
We need to talk about
Barbie. Was so good.
Why your disillusion has gone so far? No,
it was so good. It was so good. But why I liked it so much was because it was essentially just like a parody of Matrix, you know? And there were a lot of references to the Matrix, but she's like if Barbie or Neo, it doesn't matter who, had that moment where they're in Barbie land, they think everything's perfect. And then and then she's like, hey, have you guys ever thought about death? And then all of her friends are like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Margot Robbie, so hot.
Love Margot Robbie. Like, if Barbie Robbie was just like sitting
Margot Barbie, yeah,
and didn't then go out into the real world to be like, wait, what is this? What's really going on here? But just sat there continuing to think about, wait, what is death? When everyone around her is just like, everything's great, ha ha ha, you know,
right,
like that sounds like a fate worse than death, you know, if you ask me. So. Or like another one, this is kind of a sadder example, but like years ago, like 10 years ago, I worked in this facility in Long Island that was like, it was like a campus where they would like troubled kids, orphaned kids with like severe learning disabilities, all that kind of stuff, lived there and went to school there and all that, you know. And I worked there for a little bit and got to know some of these kids pretty well, right? And most of these kids in the house I worked in, most of these kids were just like, their cognitive ability was so underdeveloped that they didn't realize the severity of their situation.
Right.
You know, like there just wasn't an ability to be like, wow, this really sucks. And there must be something better out there, or any of that. A lot of them were abused kids. So there was like, they were fighting. It was wild, you know? And then the one kid in that group of kids who was pretty good, his learning disability wasn't so severe. I mean, he's at this point, he's in his 20s and probably like out in the world working at Walmart, in a bank, whatever, you know, he was capable enough to, you know, see what was going on and had a level of awareness that the other kids didn't. And it seemed to me that kid suffered more than the other kids.
Right.
Because he was able to look around and say, this situation isn't normal. This situation isn't healthy. Right. This situation isn't good. And there is something else out there. But he was 14 and didn't have a family and is living in this facility. Right. So he had a level of awareness to show him that there's more, but not quite enough awareness or cognitive ability to go pursue that more, you know?
Right.
So it was like living in the cave, knowing you're in a cave, but having no way out of the cave. And again, now he's in his 20s, so he's probably out in the world working and living his life, which would be great. So maybe it did work out. But that state of in-betweenness just seems unhealthy, you know? Yeah. To have not gone fully to the other side, you know?
Right. You're making me think of back to bars. When I was reading his essay on mythology semantics, right?
Yeah.
He has this crazy reading about wrestling.
Cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. But essentially wrestling, the whole entire not Olympic wrestling, I'm talking WWE, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
World, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah.
You jabronis. It's all based in semantics that have no connection to each other. And it's all about signs and symbols. So the story doesn't even have to connect. It doesn't matter why they're fighting. It doesn't matter who they're fighting. And really it doesn't matter who wins, right? Yeah. It's not about athletic ability necessarily, though they are athletic, what have you, right? And go through a lot. But it's not about necessarily the outcome of the game, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the outcome of the storyline or why the storyline even exists. Each moment in every single wrestling match is built upon stage acting, like the theater. And he starts talking about Shakespeare and all, all this stuff, the theatrical dramas, right?
That's so awesome.
And it's all based upon, throwing your body and acting emotional and stuff like that. It's about the play, the actor in the play at the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which goes to the Plato, what does he call it? You mentioned it a few weeks ago, the mimesis theater or whatever, the mimic, right? Where theater is and actors are imitating real life, which is a sort of essentially distorting and exploiting the larger village. And that's what Barths argues, is that wrestling exploits essentially the arrogance of the masses by who are willing to sort of partake in, buying the shadows on the cave wall, right? And then they profit and make money off of it. So it's kind of, and that, so let's go back to this student you were kind of talking about a minute ago, right?
Yeah.
Then you get these people, you get a larger number that realize wrestling's fucking stupid. This is completely ridiculous theater, right? Over emotions and this and that, and then let's say we were in, Tingley Coliseum during WWE with a whole village that is actually entranced in this, spectacle. You'd feel like an outcast. And that is what's happening nowadays, he argued.
Yeah. Interesting.
Through signs, through commercials, through cleaning, whatever. He argues that in his same book, Mythology, talks about soap commercials and how they sell us to be like pure morality and cleansing with their color palettes. And
so weird.
Yeah. With like white people all happy, like washing up in the 60s, just the fonts they use and everything. And the awesome thing he does is brings all through a filter of our literal reality, calls it something, is actually just is created by all this stupid semantic and performances that we see, right?
Yeah.
There wouldn't even be colors, and there'd be different colors, and there'd be different houses and different lives and age, if it wasn't for all this bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is the Barbie movie. This is what the Barbie movie's about. Right. Yeah, that's why I love it so much.
I don't know if ours would like the Barbie movie, but all right.
Dude, he would love it. Oh my God. Look, the Barbie movie was rich, dude. It was just so good. I'm not even being ironic.
I'm not gonna lie, I was not impressed the first time.
That's okay. We don't have.
Pretty sure I said out loud, this might be the worst movie I've.
Oh, you're tripping, bro. No, because all right. Here's another scene from Barbie that I've loved. So okay, Barbie and Ken both leave, right? They're driving their stupid convertible car, freaking. okay, so they're driving the car and then they go into the real world. And then Ken, he looks around and he's just like, wait a second. Because he's been like this emasculated, plastic man for his entire life, right? Always doing what Barbie tells him, right? And then he looks around and he's like, wait a second. And he sees all these like businessmen telling their secretaries what to do and stuff like that, And it's like, I know all these guys got mad about that movie because they think it's like anti-man or like not a true representation of we don't live in a 1950s patriarchy anymore. Which, okay, fair enough. So I don't really care about that. It was still a funny movie. Like, so Ken sees all these like strong men, and then Ken's like, man, I want to like have a horse. I want to be a cowboy. I want to like tell women what to do, So then this is the guy who only goes like halfway out of the cave, right? Because he sees it and he's just like, wait a second, there is another way to be. But all he does is replace one system for another system, right? So he sees like the Barbie matriarchy and then he's like, oh shit, that's fucked up. Like I never felt good within that. So then he goes, I'm going to replace it with the Kendom, with the Ken patriarchy. So then he climbs halfway out of the cave and then climbs back into the cave. And then like in the same way that like a wizard or a magi would, changes it, alters it in order to make it something like, more palatable to his own need for power and control. Right. And then turns it into the Kendom patriarchy, which is fucking hilarious. Dude's walking around in a fur coat wearing like a horse necklace. It's really funny. But then Barbie, being the protagonist of the story, she doesn't just go halfway out of the cave. She goes all the way out of the cave, and going all the way out of the cave is when you obliterate any system at all. You're not replacing one system for another. This is like, I've met people in the Buddhist world who like, they grew up Catholic and they're like, or Christian, whatever. I used to be Christian. And my family's still Christian, but now I'm Buddhist and I'm a Buddhist and my family hates that I'm Buddhist. And it's like, shut up. Like all you're doing is replacing one system for the other. You didn't grow at all. That's Ken. Whereas like the real goal is to just obliterate any system, just like freaking Clarence Darrow style anarchism, philosophical anarchism, break that shit down and become free. And that's what your man Roland Barths is talking about. It's like,
love Roland. Old Rollo.
Old Roland, man. That's what he's talking about. He's saying you like, whoa, okay, we have this contrived, manufactured space, right? This whatever consumeristic Barbie land, essentially. And here are the values of that space. And the goal within that space is to conform to its values and succeed within the game of Barbie land. Right. So it's dangerous to reject that system completely and break out of it. Stop watching WWE, whatever he says, he's like, break out of the mob mentality, the cult mentality that is society itself. Break out of it completely. Don't replace it with something else. Just break out of it, be free. And then that's where we find the kingdom of God. That's where we find like capital R reality, So that's why I love the Barbie movie.
Oh my God. Listen, I haven't seen it in years, so I don't really know. I wish I could argue with you more. I just know I had an abhorrent rejection to it when I saw it. I don't know. I just felt like it was like capitalizing on this idea of categorizations. And in so doing became a category within itself too.
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, at the end, like my one sort of like gripe with it was at the end, they reinstated the Barbie land matriarchy. And then all the Kens were like second tier citizens. And I was like,
yes.
And I was like, wait, hold on a second. I was like, and I got why, like within the context of the film, it was like funny and kind of worked, But if they were, I think going for more like truly just, outside the context of the film and just trying to be ethical or moralistic or something, it would have been like, hey, everyone is on the same playing field now. Good job,
Right.
That said, the figure of Barbie herself just jets. She leaves the Barbie land entirely, you know? So,
right.
you know, she was like, Margot Robbie is like, I'm done with Barbie land. I'm going to go be a human now, you know?
Right.
Which is all it is. I mean, when we talk about shamanic spiritual work and crossing to the other side of the river and all that, it's like, I mean, that's just poetic language for saying like, I'm just becoming more human. I'm just becoming more okay with who I am and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's like in Zen, there's a line that says like, before awakening, you chop wood and carry water. After awakening, you chop wood and carry water. Like nothing changes, just the ease with which you're doing it. You're no longer this neurotic maniac who's like pissed off that he's chopping wood or something, you know?
Right.
So,
did Margot go deeper into the cave though? I don't know. That's a question. She went into secular society.
it's all levels, you know? Yeah.
I don't know. There's issues with that movie. Beautiful people casted, freaking. They got like the ugly Barbie upstairs who's like the magi and like,
oh yeah, the weird Barbie. Yeah. Weird Barbie is that she's the shamanic figure who's like
yeah.
She is. She's the one who like she hasn't like fully left the cave. She's like your friend in like high school or college, like the friend who's like, hey man, have you smoked weed and read Roland Barths yet? You know, it's like that's who she is, you know. It's like that's a great figure, that's an important figure when everyone's in high school and college, like you want that. Beyond college, you know, it's a good figure, you know. But then Barbie goes beyond where the weird Barbie went. The weird Barbie only went so far too, you know?
Right.
And that's why she's weird.
I don't know. It's a hard sell for me. It's a hard
all right, whatever.
It's a hard sell. Those years of college really paid off though. That analysis was rocking either way.
Yeah.
I want to wake Plato up with Roland Barths and have him watch Barbie and be like,
they would love it.
Boys,
they would love every second of it. They would love it so much.
Nah, man, Barths his nose would be bleeding, Corner Jeff style.
On behalf of the Jarads, thank you for listening. Follow, rate, and tell your friends. The Jarads will be back next time, and always remember, eventually, all things merge into one, and a river runs through it. Be well.